Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 15 I Will Always Love You. Shit, how could this happen? This ward was completely surrounded by a barrier personally set up by Hokage-sama. It seems someone was capable enough to break his barrier, thought the falcon-masked Anbu. Turning on his microphone. All units. Uchiha Sasuke has gone missing. I repeat, Uchiha Sasuke has gone missing. Inquire any possible suspect you find and someone inform Kakashi-senpai about this, he shouted, followed by shouts of ROGER. Konoha's forest 1 mile north of Hokage's monument hideout. Oh wow, I was really starving for ramen. Thanks Naru-kun, beamed Kushina as she gazed at the steaming bowls of ramen like a predator while Naruto chuckled at her ramen-obsessed enthusiasm as he shook his head. But Ka-san, what about? He trailed off when he found Kushina wolfing down ramen as he blinked. Never mind, I guess, he muttered before sitting beside her and two began wolfing down the steaming bowls, with their eating manners being strikingly similar. The only sounds except the pitter-patter of raindrops were their slurping sounds as they only concentrated on their food, like it was a wholly untouched thing and deserved their full attention. Both looked at each other, their bowls finished when only one filled bowl was left among the 10 to 12 empty ones, the noodles hanging limply by their mouth sides as they stared at each other with a challenging look in their eyes, like a Mexican standoff. Stand down, Ka-san. That one's mine, said Naruto as he glared at Kushina while she glared back. We'll see, Naru-kun, she said with a smirk before doing a ram sign, making Naruto stiffen for whatever she was planning on doing. Fuin, seal, she exclaimed with a grin while Naruto's eyes widened when he felt his arms and legs stick to each other like they were being tied to handcuffs. He tried to open them, but it was like they were tied by an external force. His jaw dropped when he saw seal tags on his under forearms and under thighs. When did you? He said with a gaping expression while Kushina grinned at him. When I was eating, she said with a victorious smirk, making Naruto's eyes twitch. But placing them in at such positions, it's impossible that I couldn't even notice, he said while her grin widened. I'm not a cage-level kunoichi for nothing, Naru-kun, she said, making Naruto sigh in defeat as she agonizingly took the last bowl in her soft and slender hands and started eating them slowly, making his eyes twitch in irritation. He averted his gaze so as to not see the tortoise display, but it would seem that Kushina had different ideas. This is good. Did you know that the last bowl has its own special taste, Naru-kun? Said Kushina in a teasing tone with an innocent smile. Will you just eat it already? He shouted as she looked at him innocently. You said something, she said, making a vein pop on his forehead. That seems familiar, he muttered as she resumed her tortoise eating. He could withstand those fun hours in dungeons with Ibiki, but this was the most tortoise torture. Now he understood Choji's feelings whenever he ate that last barbecue piece in front of him. Suddenly, he noticed the way she was eating. His eyes zoomed in, as he watched the delectable noodles slip from the metallic spoon into those soft pink lips as she ate them slowly. Wow, shit, I'm becoming a pervert, aren't I? He thought as he closed his eyes, a dark blush on his face which Kushina seemed to notice as she smirked at him. She didn't know why, but she enjoyed flirting with him, and annoying him along the way, of course. I better keep my eyes closed. I cannot watch as the last of my ramen-chan gets devoured by those soft. Oh hell no, what the fuck is wrong with me? He thought as he kept his eyes closed, an annoyed expression on his face. His eyes snapped open, when he felt the warm noodles grazing his lips. His oceanic blue eyes widened when he saw Kushina sitting beside him, the bowl in on one hand, and she poked his lips with the ramen-filled spoon. Open up, Naru-kun, she said with a sweet smile, almost making Naruto faint from her cuteness, before moisture gathered in his eyes. He had never thought of this moment, his mother feeding him ramen with those love-filled eyes. It was like a dream come true. Ka-san, you're giving me your ramen, he said with a lump in his throat, a confused expression on his face while Kushina nodded at him with a smile. He knew the gravity of the situation here. He himself knew how hard it was for him and as well as his mother to share even one spoon of ramen, as Ayumi told him. But here, she was giving him her whole freaking bowl, and a last one at that. But, why? You never shared it with anyone, much less give it, he said while she giggled at his perplexed expression. Baka, you're all I want. There's nothing important to me in this world than you, and I would be willing to sacrifice anything for you, she said before a cute pout replaced her smile. Although, giving the whole bowl to you seems to be pushing it. But that's fine as long as it is you, she said with a smile making him almost burst in tears. This situation may look comical to many others, but in their language, they understood that if she was willing to give him her ramen, he was really something special to her that no one could hope to take place in her eyes. Thank you, Ka-san. Thank you, he said as he took the warm spoon in his mouth with quivering lips while Kushina started feeding him with abundant love in her eyes, those warm violet love-filled eyes which were only reserved for him. Those eyes which could make enemies faint with just their ferocious gaze. It really made him all warm and fuzzy inside to know that he was that much special to her. Besides, she started in between her feeding, I always wanted to feed my Naruto-kun, she said as she wiped the noodles off the side of his mouth, making him blush at the contact before she put the empty bowl on the table. Kai, she exclaimed before she was glomped by Naruto, who hugged her tightly to him, making her blink before she smiled at him. I love you so much, Ka-san, he said with a sniff, making Kushina blush, as she could feel the rise of double meaning behind those words before she rubbed his back softly, making him want to sleep there right then. I love you too, Naruto-kun, she said in a whisper when she felt Naruto's body loosen against herself. Why do these 3 words seem too suspicious to be shared between mother and son? Said Ayumi in a thinking pose with a devilish smirk, expecting an answer from the blonde object of her affection. She blinked when she got nothing before smiling. Hee. Sweet dreams, Naruto-kun. Kushina blinked when she heard sounds of light snoring as she now noticed that the rain had stopped. Pulling herself just a little bit, she was greeted to the sight of her ex-son sleeping with a peaceful expression on his face. Moisture gathered in her eyes when she saw his face, a face which had endured so much and could still be able to give birth to such serene expression. A lone tear streamed down her tear-stained cheeks as she firmly but lightly hugged Naruto to her, so as to not wake him up. I would make it up to you, Naruto-kun. For every punch, every kick, every stab, every glare. For everything, she said between her chocked silent sobs as she shifted herself back on the sofa after some moments and slowly put his head on her lap. Wiping her wet eyes, she caressed his blonde locks of spiky but soft and silky hair lovingly. For now, she was just content to lose herself in that beautiful and cute expression on his face. Leaning down, she put aside his blonde bangs before kissing him on the forehead affectionately as she caressed his whisker marks. She giggled when he stirred in his sleep while mumbling. Feels good, he mumbled with a small smile, making Kushina giggle sweetly at him. Oh, that feels good, Naruto-kun, she whispered playfully in his ears as she continued to rub his whisker marks softly. Those whisker marks, which distinguished his handsome appearance from every man, were one of the things along his blue eyes and blonde hair she loved. Actually, she could say that she was fond of every fiber of his being. Her eyes slowly traveled to down his face, and settled on the lips, making pink tint dust her cheeks. Seeing his slightly parted lips, she slowly leaned down with only one thought. I wonder how those would feel, being only inches away from his lips, her nose touching his nose as his hot breath tickled her face. She started to close the gap ever so slowly. The gap decreasing, almost there, just a little more. Her nose suddenly scrunched as her eyes became half-lidded. She suddenly jerked her head back and turned sideways. AACHOO, God bless you. Damn, first that thunder and now this cursed cold. She stopped her train of thoughts before blushing darkly at the stunt she was going to pull. I have to control myself. Besides, I don't think Naruto-kun that thinks of me as a woman. What if he hates and disgusts me if he comes to know of this? No. I can't do this. I have to be his mother and give everything he wants. But the most thing he wants is love. What am I going to do? These feelings are so conflicted, damn it, she thought while holding her head in irritation. Seeing her still somewhat wet condition, she slowly put Naruto's head on a pillow by her side before slipping from under him. Slipping herself out of the now ragged gown, her now nude form approached the bath with a grace which only a kunoichi like her possessed. Her body was like that of handmade by Kami herself, all the curves were in the right place creating an hourglass figure. Her nice perfect round and firm ass swayed along her each step. Her supple, firm and milk-creamy D-cup tits jiggled along with her movements while her pink nipples were hardened due to the coldness of the wet gown. She cupped her breasts with a satisfied smirk on her face. Hee hee. All hail the Uzumaki bloodline. These breasts wouldn't become saggy like Tsunade-sama's and hence I don't need any of those uncomfortable bra. HMM. Why do I have this sudden urge that Naruto-kun accidentally wakes up and sees me like this, her thoughts swaying in general from one topic to another as she closed the door. Time skip. 6 hours later. Same location. Naruto-kun. Wake up sleepyhead, whispered a soft angelic voice in his ears as Naruto stirred in his sleep. Yeah. More ramen. Ka-san. He mumbled making Kushina giggle as she slowly rubbed his whisker marks lovingly and placed a kiss on his cheek. Yo Naruto-kun. Wake up baka. Kushi-sama wants you in her presence, said Ayumi in a sarcastic tone as she sent small chakra pulses through his body effectively making him wake up, but groggily. What's wrong Ayumi-chan? I told you not to. Yawn. Disturb me when I'm asleep, he said aloud with a sleepy and a silly expression on his face, as he rubbed his head while looking around himself when his eyes fell on Kushina, before they widened taking in her form. Her face was now practically glowing white after cleansing herself off the dirt and tear stains. Her unblemished soft skin was now milk creamy, her long red hair now neatly clipped at her forehead making her an angel in his eyes. She was wearing that same outfit whose torso he had seen in the wardrobe. Red trimmings along the shoulder, forearms and rib region made it look exotic and the flame-drenched Uzumaki sign just reached the peak in his eyes, the tightness of her torso making her look all that more appealing. There was a black zipper along her chest, which was open showing a bit of her cleavage making him blush. There was a thin utility dark blue belt containing cylindrical pockets, preferably containing storage scrolls. Looking down, he blushed when he noticed the black kunoichi pants tightly hugging her shapely legs. On the pants, there were typical kunai and shuriken holsters. All in all, it gave her a look of badass kunoichi in general and a goddess and someone to admire, for him. Ka-san. You look awesome. Where did you get this? He asked with admiration in his eyes for the outfit as well as for the one wearing it while Kushina's cheeks turned a light pink upon his compliment as she composed herself. Hee hee. I ordered a self-customized outfit from a friend of mine who runs a secret shop down the red light district, she said with a light smile while scratching her cheek lightly. Clothing store in the red light district. He tilted his head in confusion while Kushina smirked. Yeah. And from your memories I presume that you are quite well treated in the most resented district, she said while he nodded sadly. Yeah. Those guys are the only ones who would care for me or treat me right. But I've never seen any shinobi clothing store there, he said while she sighed. It's called secret for a reason, she said while he grinned sheepishly making her shake her head at him. So, Ka-san, would you mind if I could get that ultra-cool flame-swirling sign on my trench coat? He said with anticipation while she nodded with a smile like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Awesome, I'm gonna look so cool in that, he said with a grin while Kushina smiled at him. Absolutely dead serious and a genius when the situation calls for it, and a goofy funny guy when he's just being himself. You're really something Naruto-kun. I'm proud of you. You just keep impressing me, she thought with a fond smile as she watched him look around the spacious wooden room. Ka-san. What about that curse mark? Do you want it? He asked meekly, not sure if she would want something as vile as curse mark. She jerked her head, like she realized it just now. Oh yeah, I totally forgot. Of course, she said with an eager expression while Naruto beamed at her with happiness. He wanted to help her and was not sure if she would accept being a part of something that Orochimaru once created. But, I have to bite you, he said with a blush while Kushina's face turned tomato red as she remembered what Ayumi had said. Oh, okay. She stuttered trying to get a hold of her blush, something she was sure that only Naruto was capable of doing now. Slipping down her zipper a bit, she revealed more of her unblemished milk creamy skin making Naruto's blush darken as now he also could see more of her cleavage. Hesitantly approaching her, he could also sense Kushina's uneasiness as she was just standing there with her hands down her sides, a dark blush on her face as she bit her lower lip. Standing just in front of her, He closed his eyes while taking a deep breath. It was a first time for him. He didn't know what would happen and was completely placing his trust in Ayumi, which almost made the Queen Biju jump in joy that he had so much faith in her. Okay. So what now, Ayumi-chan? He asked inwardly. You need to enter Yuki cloak mode to make this work, she said as Naruto nodded. Ka-san, the barrier around this compound, is it activated right now? To give you my curse mark, I need to use Ayumi's chakra and I don't want anyone in the village to sense it, he said while Kushina nodded, the cute blush still on her face as Naruto started using the Yuki until there was a red chakra cloak surrounding him. Kushina saw as his features became more ferocious just like hers became whenever she used Yuki. His hair became spikier while his nails and canines grew along with his eyes turning red with a black slit and his whiskers getting deep, gusts of wind picking around him because of the chakra force. This will hurt a bit, Ka-san, he said while Kushina nodded with a smile on her face, the darkening blush still on her face as she took in his fiery features making him all the more appealing. Leaning towards her neck, his hot breath tickling her skin as he grabbed a hold of her shoulders, making sure to lessen the Yuki around his hands as much as he could to lessen its harmful effects, but Kushina remained unaffected by such small amounts seeing as she was used to it. Leaning further, his elongated canines pierced her creamy skin drawing blood while Kushina remained unaffected by the pain seeing as she was a cage-level kunoichi with high tolerance for pain, whereas Naruto channeled Yuki through his canines and into her skin. But he was surprised when an involuntary moan escaped Kushina's lips, who tilted her head more showing more skin as if appreciating his action. She was feeling pain too, but somehow the action of him biting her seemed to be more pleasurable than the pain. I thought the process was supposed to be painful, he thought as he just finished channeling enough Yuki before he leaned back while Kushina almost whimpered from the lack of contact. Looking over, he could see the formation of a red swirling Uzumaki sign on her side back neck, a flustered expression on her face. Ka-san, are you all right? He said with a concerned expression while Kushina bit her lower lip, her eyes closed as she took deep breaths to calm herself. I guess that pervert of a Biju didn't tell Naru-kun about the pleasure part. I should have known, thought the fiery kunoichi as she slowly nodded at him. Ayumi-chan says that so far I have about 1 tael worth of chakra reserved in the curse seal, so you should be able to access it too. Just tap your curse swirling mark with your chakra-laced index and middle finger and say, Kai. It should slowly leak Yuki in your coils so as to not damage your chakra coils due to instant injection. If you want to stop the flow, just do the same and say, Fuin, he said as Kushina nodded with a thoughtful expression on her face before she proceeded to do what he said. Kai, she whispered before she felt the familiar Yuki being slowly injected into her coils. It was like she was gradually becoming strong, like her already large chakra levels were growing at a steady rate. Seeing that it was working perfectly fine, she sealed it back so as to preserve Yuki. Wow, amazing, it worked, said Naruto with an expression of awe while Ayumi smiled to herself with pride whereas Kushina just smiled at Naruto's expression. It seemed like Fuinjutsu never ceased to amaze his curious mind. To her, it wasn't that much seeing that she could break down or create seals so complex which would make seal masters like Jiraiya whimper. Ayumi-chan, you're so awesome. Hey, say, will you teach me Fuinjutsu? I know Ka-san promised that she would teach me but she wouldn't always be there to monitor me but you are always here, he said inwardly with a hopeful tone while Ayumi blushed at the compliment. Oh of course Naruto-kun, she said with a flustered expression while Naruto grinned inwardly at her. Hee, you're wrong Naruto-kun, as far as I know, Kushina isn't going to leave you as long as she lives, thought Ayumi with a smile, a small blush still on her cheeks. Thanks Ayumi-chan, you're the best. I really like you Datbeo, he said inwardly making Ayumi stop frozen at whatever she was doing, a cute blush on her face, her eyes widened as she blinked, processing the exact words he had said to her. He likes me, she thought, repeating those words before a full-blown glowing smile started to creep on her face as she jumped with joy, her 9 tails swishing madly behind her in excitement. Do you hear it Kitsune-chan? He likes me, I'm so happy, she said to a baby fox, who was yipping at her in delight, as if happy for her while she cuddled it with a large smile on her face, like a girl cuddling with her teddy bear in happiness. Both of them were sitting on the green flush grass of the clearing in the beautiful forest with small foxes surrounding her and playing with each other, making her herself hard to believe that a sewer existed instead of this heaven. Naru-kun. The sun is setting down and it's almost dark. It's time to pay that monkey a visit, she said with an annoyed expression on her face. Hiruzen was like a father figure to her, but the way he handled her son's childhood, he lost all the respect that the poor guy had strained his back to earn. Monkey, trailed Naruto in confusion before realization dawned on him. Wait. You don't mean G, he said, almost slipping and forgetting that he still hadn't forgiven Hiruzen, while Kushina nodded at him with a serious expression on her face which told him straight out that she was not going to accept no as the answer. Sighing in defeat, he nodded while Kushina's serious expression was instantly replaced by a bright smile before she placed a kiss on his cheek. That's my Naru-kun. Now let's go and kick some ass, she said with a grin while Naruto nodded with an adorable blush which made Kushina want to glomp him right there. Wearing his black shinobi sandals, he proceeded to the door, followed by Kushina when he spotted something at the corner of his eye. Ka-san, what are those strange kunai hanging by the wooden shelf? He said while pointing at the tri-pronged kunai, making Kushina sigh. Those kunai are the used for the teleportation technique. Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, your father used, which made him famous across the elemental nations, she said before her eyes widened when she noticed her slip up, while Naruto's eyes widened too. My father? You haven't yet told me who my father was. Ka-san, come on, tell me, he said with an ecstatic expression, a bright light shining in those blue orbs. She was really hoping to stall this question, but it would seem she had no choice. Your father, Naru-kun. It was the Yondaime Hokage, she said with closed eyes while whispering the last part through gritted teeth, as if containing her anger at the mention of Minato, who she now couldn't help but resent him. Meanwhile, the whole world around Naruto froze as he came to know about his father, someone who sealed Ayumi inside his own son, a stunned silence following Kushina's hate-laced whisper. He didn't know if he should be happy or angry at his father. On one side he was ecstatic that he was the son of the infamous Yondaime, but on the other hand he was a bit angry at him. Although he couldn't help but hold a grudge against the guy for the most part of his life for condemning his existence to hell, but now. Ka-san. Did he love me? He said with his bangs shadowing his face while Kushina couldn't keep the hatred from touching her answer. It doesn't matter now, seeing as he practically destroyed your childhood, she spoke with venom with clenched fists, whereas Naruto again asked. Did he love me? He said while she just refused out flatly. No, she said, not meeting his gaze after he had lifted his head and was currently piercing her eyes. You're lying, he said while she narrowed her eyes. Why would I lie to you? I told you he didn't love you, he only cared about being a hero and nothing else, she said, angry that he was pushing such a subject. You're again lying. You're letting your hatred control you. He loved me. I refuse to believe that he didn't. Besides, why would he sacrifice his life then if he was a man like that? If he was a father who couldn't love his son, then he couldn't have possibly been a leader who loved this village enough to sacrifice himself. Instead he would have run the moment Ayumi escaped the seal to save his ass, which only someone as sick as Orochimaru could do. Not the Yondaime, he said with clarity in his voice while Kushina remained silent, a surprised expression on her face. I agree that maybe his methods of handling things were wrong, but his intentions were good. Or it could be that maybe he was seeing something that we all aren't able to see right now, he said with a serious tone while Kushina couldn't help but let a small smile grace her lips at his maturity, and that how good he turned out, it was nothing short of a miracle. You've really matured, Naru-kun, haven't you? But still, I can't help but hate him. I'm a mother. You can't understand my feelings, Naru-kun. I carried you for 9 months, nourished you, loved you and still love you with every fiber of my being. But when your baby's life is destroyed on the day he's born. You seem to throw logic out of the window, no matter how insane you may look like to the other. The same way you reacted when I told you to back down earlier today. Your logical part was telling you that I was being cautious, even Ayumi too, but your emotions were just too great to understand anything else. The same is the case with me, she said with a saddened expression while Naruto nodded with her, kinda embarrassed to have acted like that earlier, but then the frustrations and emotions were on all high and he couldn't help but burst like that. He looked up when he felt Kushina tightly hug him, her arms around his neck as she rubbed his back head softly, a sigh escaping her lips. I don't what I would have done if I had lost you on that night, Naruto-kun. You are everything to me. You are everything I need in this world. Uchiha Makoto. You know her right, she said while Naruto blushed at her words, a warm feeling engulfing his fragile heart before he nodded at her question. Her son Uchiha Sasuke, the one who was given everything he desired since he was born, practically living a life of royalty. What if Ayumi was sealed inside of him by Uchiha Fugaku on that night? Do you think his life would have been that merry? Wouldn't Makoto be enraged that her son, who could have gotten so much, was treated like trash? Wouldn't she despise the very soil on which Fugaku walked on, doing something like that to her baby? The same is the case with you. You could have gotten so much. Love, happiness, joy, power. All would have been within your grasp. Hee. Of course we wouldn't have let you become a spoiled one. But your life would have been much better. I know that I'm being selfish. But that's what every mother wants for her son. Although I'm no longer your biological mother, but you're much more precious to me than what sons are possibly to their mothers, she said with a serene expression while Naruto just listened to her, stunned at the implications of her words. And that's how an Uzumaki says, I have a crush on you, folks, inwardly thought Ayumi while rolling her eyes at the awkward species that were the Uzumakis. What does she mean by that? Thought Naruto as he continued to hold her in silence. Meanwhile Kushina slowly blinked, coming to the terms with what had slipped her mouth in the spur of the moment. Shit, I'm an idiot. Geez. Why can't I be cool for once and not slip up like a klutz? Thought Kushina with a nervous expression on her face as she hoped that Naruto wouldn't have noticed that last line of a slip-up. Ka-san, what do you mean? He said after leaning back and looking into her deep violet eyes, making her heart beat faster as she avoided his gaze with a pink tint on her cheeks. And nothing. Let's go, she said before releasing him from the hug and began pushing him towards the door. Oi. You don't need to push, he said with an annoyed expression while Kushina just kept pushing him until they were outside, wanting to escape the embarrassing situation. Geez, Ka-san, what's wrong? He said while Kushina just kept ignoring him and released the barrier surrounding the hideout compound. Was it something I said, Ayumi-chan? He asked inwardly while Ayumi face-palmed herself, a groan escaping her lips. You're an idiot, she said out flatly while Naruto's sweat dropped before zooming himself out to see Kushina looking at him with a strange expression on her face. Fine, I guess. Geez, females sure are strange. Doesn't matter if they are human or demon, he thought before deciding to change the subject. He knew that she was uncomfortable with what she said, he was too. He couldn't fully understand what she meant by that, but he sure was eager to find it. Could it be that she too is attracted to me? He thought as he could strangely feel himself liven up at the possibility. What's wrong with me? I can't think of him like that. He's my son, my baby. But I love him very much. These feelings, what if he hates because of it? I don't think I can live with that, Kushina thought with a down expression before she heard Naruto's bright voice. Ka-san, tell me, can I learn that flying thunder technique which Dad used? He said with enthusiasm while Kushina sighed in relief, relieved that he wasn't thinking about her slip-up. Naru-kun. You always know how to make me smile, don't you? She thought as a radiant smile chirped on her face. Of course, but the fact is that nobody except your father knew how to use that technique, she said while still strangely smiling, even at what was supposed to be the gloomy part making Naruto sweat drop. What the hell's so funny about it then? He asked with an irritated face while Kushina giggled at his face. Nothing. I'm just happy to have you. That's all, she said with a grin while Naruto blushed, taken aback by her words before she laughed merrily at his expense making him more irritated. You like to do that, don't you? He said while pointing an accusing finger at her whereas she just started laughing harder while holding her stomach. You should, hee. See, hee, your face, she said while her melodic laughter echoed throughout the dark forest whereas Naruto had a small smile on his face. Doesn't matter how idiotic I'll look. The fact that I can make you smile is enough for me, he thought while faking a face of irritation. Are you done already? We have to go now. Remember. he said with an irritated face, while inwardly he was smiling at her. Oh. Hee, right. Sorry Naru-kun, she said while wiping the tears of laughter from her eyes as Naruto stood beside her and started walking in the direction of the village before he felt a hand on his shoulder. Looking behind, he saw a mischievous glint in her bright violet orbs, a cunning smile on her face. But Naru-kun, I'm still weak, remember, from giving you birth a couple of hours ago, remember? My body's still not up to its full strength. Would you mind carrying me? She said with a cute expression and puppy dog eyes, making Naruto groan as he just couldn't resist it. The way she asked him, the sight looked so erotic that he had to struggle to control his raging hormones. He was in that stage after all, and because of the rinnegan and a particular perverted someone, it seemed to amplify his urges. Fine. He huffed with a fake scowl as he bent down, his back facing her while Kushina smiled brightly at her devious prank. There was a purpose behind this. She needed to know if Naruto seemed to think of her the same way she was feeling, and the blush on his face despite his scowl couldn't have said any better. She didn't know why she was having these urges to flirt with him, but it sure was fun and she was enjoying every moment of it. Incest be damned, the only thing that mattered to her was that she make him happy and loved him as much as she could, even if some limits and boundaries are broken along the way. Jumping like a little schoolgirl, she landed on his back, making him grunt from the sudden pressure as he lifted himself, a dark blush on his face as Kushina's breasts were pressed tightly against his back while he got hold of her lean thighs, which could make any man die from nosebleed just from the feel of them. What's wrong Naru-kun? Your face is up all red, do you have a fever? Here, let me check, said Kushina oh so innocently as she sensually traced her fingers over his forehead, making him weak in the knees, while Naruto's eyebrows twitched in what seemed to be realization. Why does it seem that she's doing this intentionally? And is she mimicking me? He thought, but couldn't help the butterflies that were dancing in his stomach from her closeness. Meanwhile Ayumi was laughing heartily at the scene. Hee, I can't believe it, she's acting the same way Naruto-kun used to act in front of that Hinata girl. Kushi-chan, you're really something, thought Ayumi as she watched the scene going on with a fond smile on her face, as if burning these happy memories deep in her mind, for she knew the dark future that was waiting for both of them. I'm fine, damn it, just hold on, we're leaving, he said after shaking his head of his blush and get a hold of himself while Kushina just giggled at him before Naruto dashed in the direction of the village. Naru-kun, I'm impressed. For a 13-year-old, your speed and agility far exceeds even rare prodigies like Itachi, she said while tightly clinging to his back, a smile on her face while Naruto blushed at the compliment. He was still not used to frequent compliments that Kushina made about him, but his heart swelled every time with joy. She appreciated everything he did, and didn't hesitate to show him. Every time, he couldn't stop the blush of embarrassment from reaching his face. In these past few days, he was appreciated far more as compared to his life. So naturally, it was still new for him, but hey, he wasn't complaining or anything. He smiled at the feeling of her body pressed against his back, it was like she made him warm and full. But don't let it get to your head. You do know that Akatsuki is behind you, right? Even with your above expectation skills, it wouldn't take more than 10 seconds flat for them to take you out even with your rinnegan, she said with a serious tone while clutching him tightly, in a warm way while Naruto nodded with a serious expression, a determined glint in his eyes. I know Ka-san. But I will get stronger. I will train harder than ever before. With you to teach me, I know I can take anyone on in the world, he said with determination shining in his eyes. Hee, I will teach you everything I can Naru-kun, that I promise, she said with a determined smile as she rested her head on his back, a happy sigh escaping her lips. Never had she thought that she would be attracted to her own son, but it seemed that fate had other ideas. Being sent 13 years in the future, she was still as young as ever and was in her prime, so there wasn't that much an age gap between Naruto and her. I wouldn't lose you to those Akatsuki idiots Naru-kun, that I promise. With the addition of Sharingan to my arsenal, I know that I can easily defeat S-rank shinobi, but it seems that this organization is something else. I need to train Naruto as hard as I can, and I too have to master Sharingan, thought Kushina as her eyes flashed red with one black tomo while she closed her eyes in contempt, a peaceful smile on her face when she heard Naruto whisper, Arigato Ka-san. Along the way after some moments, A comfortable silence except the sound of footsteps ensued between them, while Naruto's thoughts currently drifted to the memories he got from his clone. Flashback around 6 hours ago. The shadow clone was currently going in the direction of Ichiraku's ramen, having opted to take the rooftop route to avoid confrontation with any crazy villager or one of his friends. He was in no mood to meet anyone right now. Strangely, it seemed that the rain was only pouring down the deep forests, whereas Konoha seemed to remain unaffected. Just as he was about to jump to another roof, he stopped when he heard someone shout his name. Cursing his luck, he slowly turned his head in the direction from where the voice came before a smile formed on his face. "Kurenai-chan," he exclaimed happily as the Genjutsu mistress landed just in front of him with a cold expression making him tilt his head in confusion. "Hey, what's with tea?" He stopped when he saw her doing short set of hand seals before she whispered something. Looking around, he noticed that nothing had happened before he felt himself being hugged tightly to his surprise. "Naruto-kun, how are you? I visited your room an hour ago but you weren't there, so I started searching for you," she said with a bright smile on her face as Naruto's face turned blue from the pressure she was applying in the hug. Kurenai-chan, can't breathe," he choked as Kurenai immediately released him, a sheepish expression on her face before she muttered, "Sorry." Looking at her in confusion, he asked, "What was that all about? One second you're acting like a Hyuga and another, you're like a completely different person. Is it about that idiotic fact about keeping your image of that of an ice queen and all that?" Kurenai huffed at his question. "Of course, I can't let anyone see me acting like this, you baka. I have an image to retain after all," she said with crossing her arms in front of her chest, accentuating her impressive bust, making Naruto blush before he decided to keep his eyes glued to her face and avoid the wrath of an ice queen. "I understand that, and I think you applied a genjutsu on us so that nobody sees us, correct? Or more importantly, see you smile, right?" he said seriously while Kurenai's eyes widened at his words before her eyes turned to that of confusion. "What do you mean?" she said while he sighed. "Why do you ice queens act like that? Why be cold to everyone? Even to your colleagues? There are many civilians and shinobi who don't deserve your cold expressions. And besides, why change yourself just for some pathetic perverts?" he said with a calm expression while Kurenai's eyes yet again widened as she contemplated his words, no words or retort escaping her lips. "According to me, you four ladies should just be yourself. I too was a fool to hide behind a mask back then, but now I understand that keeping your emotions bottled up will only worsen your condition. Don't think that I'm lecturing you, Kurenai-chan, but remember that you're very precious to me, someone who helped me when I was desperately in need of a friend. I don't know about the other two, but you and Anko-chan have such a bright personality and still you have to act like that. Do you both have to hide yourself from the world so much that you need to use genjutsu every time? Even when Anko-chan cries on your shoulder," he said with a pleading look in his eyes while Kurenai's eyes widened at the last sentence. "You were awake back then?" she asked with a stunned expression. "Enough to notice you before you applied that genjutsu. But please think about it, Kurenai-chan, I want to see your bright smile every time I meet you and not those cold expressions. It really gives me the creeps," said the clone while comically shuddering at the image whereas Kurenai giggled at his expression. "Thank you, Naru-kun, I will think about it," she said with a smile while Naruto nodded with a smile, the cool breeze brushing them as their hair flew in sync with the nature, making both of them blush as they watched each other, both of them averting their gazes from each other. Naruto's eyes suddenly widened when he remembered something. "Kurenai-sensei, what about Hinata-chan?" Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.